Welcome to Face to Face, connecting theater makers to the public, a program from the Legacy Theater and socialdistancetheater.org.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Face to Face. My name is Lauren Rosenay, and I am so excited to be here today with Stuart Brown. Stuart is the president of the Connecticut Critics Circle. He's the host of Sounds of Broadway, which is a 24/7 Broadway music station, and he is a member of the Dramatist Guild, the Outer Critics Circle, and the American Theater Critics Association. What an honor to have you joining us today, Stu. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really good.
Great.
So I would love to just kind of get a background of how you got involved in theater. And I kind of mentioned that you have your radio station. So I'd love to talk about how you got involved in radio as well.
Sure. And how long do we have? Is it 2 hours, 3 hours?
As long as you want.
So let's see. For theater, I remember when I think I was a freshman in high school, and we went to a family vacation in Washington, D.C., and we went to the national tour of the musical Promises, which has a score by Hal David and Burt Bacharach. Answer to the trivia question, it's the only musical they ever wrote. Huge success, very 60s sound, and I just loved it. So when I got home, a friend of mine and I went to New York by ourselves. So these are two high school freshmen taking the bus into Big Bad, New York in 1972-ish. And this is before New York was, especially 42nd Street, was Disney-fied. So there were a lot of, triple X theaters and you had these two kids going to the theater. So we had these coupons called twofers. And back in the day, they were paper coupons that you would go to the box office and exchange for tickets, 2 for the price of 1. No half-price ticket booth. So we went in, we had twofers for this show, and we get to the box office, and lo and behold, the show had closed. So after strangling my friend because he was the one that kind of dragged me in, we were looking for another show to see. And so I wanted to see a show called Sugar, which was based on the musical Some Like It Hot. And he's like, nah. He goes, let's go see this one. I don't want to see this one. Oh, please. Fine, we'll go see your show. So we paid full price for a Saturday matinee ticket, under $8. And we saw a show that was called Grease. And it was the funniest, most tuneful. It's still one of my all-time favorite shows. So then we just kept going every so often. And then when I got to college, was still reviewing theater, got involved in the college radio station. So I had a 3-hour Broadway radio show. So that's how I got into radio. And then fast forward many decades later, and I was still doing a radio show at Trinity College in Hartford. But with the technology, I was able to start my own radio station. So it's soundsofbroadway.com, and there's an app for it. Like you said, 24/7. It is the best music station for Broadway, off-Broadway, London. I play well-known, popular, obscure, but very good music. So your listeners should try it out, soundsofbroadway.com. And then when I got to Connecticut, I found out about the Connecticut Critics Circle, joined a couple of other groups, and then after a few years, I became president. Lucky me.
Amazing. And so as a theater lover and as growing up as someone who loved theater, what made you say, I love watching theater and now I'm going to become a theater reviewer and I'm going to critique it? How did that transition happen?
So it had to be in college because I was doing actually reviews in college, but they were radio station reviews. So it was like a 1-page review. So you really had to sort of fine tune what you were going to say. I don't know, maybe just one day I said, I wonder if I can get free tickets So I guess I called some uh, publicity firms and got them, and just sort of figured things out. Like, if I was listening, what do I want to stress about a show? And so I was doing radio reviews for throughout college, and then about 12 years ago, I can't remember now, but when blogging became big, I started my own blog because I wasn't attached to a newspaper.
Right.
And so then I did more of a long format, and just, I would just do that and publish reviews for Connecticut, and then also go to New York. So a lot of, I don't want to say trial and error, but sort of getting into a rhythm and a pattern of, this is what I think a good review is. And because I've seen hundreds of shows, I guess I could pick up things. Well, this is what I think is positive. This is maybe what's not so positive. And I just continued to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then as a theater reviewer, when you do go to see shows and you know that you're going to see them to review them and to write that critique, what do you notice first? What always pops out at you?
Well, I want to see, the main thing is, do I become involved in the show? Is there something that maybe emotionally attaches me, or the action? Sometimes I'm a little easy to please as far as getting really, like I said, involved in the show. But if it just sort of meanders, then I'm not really going to be taken with it. It could be someone's performance that maybe the show is just sort of okay, but I just sit there and I'm sitting, wow, that person. A lot of times it might be when I sit in my seat and the curtain is up and you can see the set and you're just amazed by the set. Now that could also be a negative if the best thing you can say about a show is the set was great.
Yep.
So I'm looking at what is going to really, I would say, emotionally attach me to the show.
Yeah. And now I'm sure you've had experiences where you've seen a show and haven't had positive feelings about it. So how do you kind of walk that fine line of not wanting to insult people? Because obviously theater is tight-knit and we all know that connections expand. And so how do you walk that fine line of not offending people but still wanting to be honest?
So a couple of years ago, I attended a theater critics conference in New York, and they had a panel of playwrighs. So you can imagine an audience of critics, an audience of playwrights. But the playwright David Lindsay-Abaire, and he wrote, I think Rabbit Hole was one of his big, and he wrote the book for Shrek the Musical. And he said two things, and I've always really kept these two things in my mind when I've written reviews. He said, one, we are human. We read reviews. So of course I'm like shuddering in my seat, like, oh my gosh, did he actually read one of my blog posts? But we're human. We read things. And also, are there ways to be critical without being snarky? Very easy to be snarky. I can come up with a witty line, or but who am I trying to impress? Myself? My fellow critics? Does it really help you as the potential audience member if I'm snarky about something, as opposed to, well, the score, maybe there weren't any memorable songs, I wasn't moved by the score. So, I think you can do things. It might take more work on your part as the reviewer, but, I'm looking at my audience as opposed to, sort of, hey, look how well or how crafty I can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. And I'm sure if anyone's watching this who wants to become a theater reviewer or is already a theater critic, I'm sure that's such great advice that you just gave, because It's so hard because I'm sure at some point you're going to come in contact with that person that you were writing about, and it's a sensitive area. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. And the thing is, and maybe because I've been doing this for a while, and but I'm comfortable with what I write.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone came up to me and said, they were really mad or they were questioning, I have no problem saying, well, this is how I felt. Now, I did a number of years ago. There was was it a musical? I think it was a musical at Seven Angels in Waterbury, and it was called The Mad Bomber. And it's based on a true story. There was a Waterbury man who would go into New York and set off bombs, and it really was not very good. And I wrote about it, but I explained why. And the playwright wrote to me, and he said, thank you very much, because you weren't, I don't know if he used the word snarky, but you didn't just go the easy route.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate what you were saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is something, again, it's very, very easy. And also when I write a review, let's say I'm writing 500 to 600 words, which is a little over, let's say between 2 and 3 pages. It takes me hours.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't sit there. Now, maybe some people can. I don't sit there and just whip out a review. I agonize. I mean, the opening, how do I close it? I have sort of a formula, but, I put a lot of time. And I think my colleagues do that also.
Right. And I'm sure, and we will put your Stew on Broadway, your blog, we'll put it there so people can go to it. But I'm sure your readers do notice that you do take that time and you really care about that you're being honest and you're giving them your true thoughts, not just what you want the playwright or the director to read about. So the Connecticut Critics Circle. So as I mentioned, you are the president. So would you mind just talking a little bit about how the Connecticut Critics Circle started?
Sure. So it started, I think, a little over 30 years ago. And, the world was very different in the sense that you had more media, you had more newspapers, you had theater critics as part of the newspapers, maybe radio, TV, cable. So I think a lot of people just got together to form an association to, just maybe to have their voice heard a little more. And from there, they started an annual awards ceremony honoring what they felt were the best of, sort of take the Tony Awards and move it to Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've been doing as the market has shrunk, as newspapers have folded and not having as many theater critics. We've expanded our membership to maybe just bloggers or cable or radio, but really looking for those voices that consistently review Connecticut theater. And the big thing that we do is our annual award ceremony, which unfortunately we had to cancel. And it wasn't so much because of social distancing and in person, but really about a third of the theater season in Connecticut was canceled.
Right.
So we don't have but we are, in fact, I'll give your listeners an exclusive. How's that? So I am going to be emailing the theaters today, actually after we finish, with the honorees. So what we did this year is we came together and we had no nominations. So we didn't say, okay, let's put together the best actor in a musical, the best costume, and then here's the nominees. And we didn't do that. We just said, who did we think were excellent this year?
Mm-hmm.
We came up with a list of 25 individuals and theater productions that we said we're going to give an award of excellence to. So they're going to get a plaque for their award of excellence, just to differentiate it from our normal awards. So I would say If you go to the Connecticut Theater Critics website, which is just ctcritics.org, by this afternoon or this weekend, Father's Day weekend, that announcement will be up.
Awesome.
Exclusive just for you.
Oh, that is amazing. Thank you for that. So how did you become president, and what made you want to become president of the Connecticut Critics Circle?
Well, when you're involved in a volunteer organization, sometimes everyone looks to you. Well, after a few years, I became vice president. Any organization, you have different levels of involvement, and I loved the organization. So I became vice president. Then the president, who had served many years, decided it was time for him. He just wanted to step down. So, he said, "Stu, would you like to run?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And it does, like I said, take someone who is going to put a lot of time and effort. There's different levels of membership. So some people could be, I just want to use my membership and go review shows, or maybe I'll go to one meeting a year. And then the people that are more on the executive board, they'll be a little more involved. So since becoming president, I've revamped the website. So I think it looks more professional, easier to maneuver. We just started, in fact, you are a product of. We have what we call our Connecticut Critics Circle mentor program. So we recruit college students to, in a sense, become reviewers in training. So they work very closely with one of our members to learn how to craft a review. And then hopefully they would continue doing that. Hopefully they would continue in the state so they could become members of the association. Because unfortunately, if you look at a lot of critics, just like you look at theater audiences, it's an aging group. And again, there are no outlets. It's not like, oh, I'm going to write for my local paper. Well, you can't. So we're trying to recruit younger members. We're also trying to recruit people of color. So we've done that, and some other initiatives to keep the group going and working with also the theaters. And I think the theaters, they'll gripe. If we say during a normal year, your production was the best musical, well, that theater's going to go, I can't believe you did that. But during this pandemic time, when we notified all the theaters, well, here's what we're going to do differently this year, they would all write back and say, thank you for doing something, because it is kind of lost, and you have all these hardworking people. So they're very thankful of what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I think even though, like you said, like we couldn't have the award ceremony this year, but I think it is so important that we still recognize everyone's great work. And yeah, I just think that's great. So how do you feel like theater is going to end up opening back up?
Well, if I knew that.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know, and it's going to be very tough for a number of reasons. One, you're still going to have some type of social distancing, and how do you do that? You have a theater that seats 1,800 people. Well, what are you going to do? Like I said, a lot of the theater audience, anyone that's going to the theater, it's an older group. Well, that's more of an at-risk group.
Yeah.
You have actors on stage. If you've ever been in the front row of a theater, you can see when the actors talk or sing, they're spitting, there's spittle. Okay, well, so I don't know. It might be until the spring. It's going to be very difficult. And we're not just talking Broadway.
Yeah.
Again, if you're like a Connecticut theater, you have 299 seats. Well, it's the exact same thing. Social distancing, the actors. So I don't know. And it is sad. I think the reason I love theater is because it's of the moment, and you become, like I said, more emotionally attached. I don't get that feeling in the movies. And when you see a show that is just spectacular, it's because you are there experiencing it right then and there. Well, for everyone, that kind of ended in March.
Right. I know, it's so hard, and I think people have been trying to keep up with things in quarantine as much as they can through Zoom and these virtual plays, but I mean, it's just not the same.
Right. I mean, like a good example is the late night host James Corden.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually, before he became a late night host, he was an actor, still an actor, but played the West End. He was on Broadway a couple of times. He won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play for a show called One Man, Two Governors. And I saw that in New York. It probably ranks in my top 3 comedies of all time. I was dying in the first act. I mean, if the second act wasn't as funny, if it was, I would have been a total mess. Well, through the National Theater, they have these recorded HD productions, and I watched it because I was like, oh, I just love this show. And it was okay. I mean, now I knew some of the things that were going to happen, but I wasn't there live. So, it's nice to have, here's a live presentation, here's a rebroadcast. It's just not the same.
So going back to the mentorship program, you mentioned trying to get more of a variety of ages reviewing theater. So have you noticed any differences in younger people reviewing shows versus the stereotypical theater critic?
Not really. I mean, in Connecticut, because we are so small, and there are ways, some theaters will have, like at Goodspeed Opera House, at intermission, they have a little reception for the critics. So you get to know people. There's really the youngest critic, I think, besides you, one of my colleagues in his 40s or something. So that's why we're doing this mentor program, is to try, I don't want to say expose, but here's an opportunity. It's probably not going to become a career, but it can just be, I don't want to say even a hobby, but just something you like to do.
Yeah. And
if we can broaden it again to younger individuals, people of color. I mean, I had an experience a couple of years ago. There was a play at Yale Rep, and of course I'm blanking on the name, but it was based on a very famous African-American book. And after the show, I went to my car, and I was in the parking lot elevator with sort of the playbill, and this young woman, probably this African-American woman, let's say late 20s. She said, "Oh, can you hold the elevator?" And she saw my playbill, and she said, "Oh, I can't wait to see that. That's like one of my favorite books. What did you think?" And I said, "Okay, well, here's what I thought." But then I was thinking, I'm a Jewish white guy, so I don't have that maybe perspective. So I was thinking, what if it was reversed? What if she was in the elevator and she had a playbill for The Chosen by Chaim Potok, which, if you're a young Jewish kid, like, you read The Chosen. I mean, that was like one of your, and I ran to the elevator and said, "Hey, I love that. What did you think of the show?" Now she's going to give her opinion, but her perspective is probably going to be very different. Well, if you have all the critics, or a lot of the critics are the same age, maybe same background, same this, same that, you still get different opinions, but it's going to be more different. Now, some people say that should make no difference. so there's been a number of articles about that. I personally think you bring your perspective. You're a young woman. You might see a show and be totally taken with it, write eloquently about it. I'll see it and say, yeah. I mean, my daughter loved Mean Girls from the second, even before the curtain went up. And she's older than you, but that was her movie when she was young. My opinion was, yeah, it was fun. It was entertaining. So that's why I think we need different voices.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more on that, because two people could go see a show and have had completely different experiences while watching it.
Yeah. And the thing is, what I hope for, because we list on our website, all the critics have their reviews, so that you go and say, oh, I liked what Stu writes, I want to read, or, oh, there's 7 reviews. Let me sort of browse through them. And, we have pictures on our website so they can see and they go, oh, Lauren, oh, that's kind of okay, but I never thought of that, so that's why, talk about what they believe, but also from different perspectives.
Everyone else brings something new to the table.
Yes.
And the Connecticut Critics Circle does an amazing job at appreciating all perspectives and all opinions. So, Stu, thank you so much for joining us today. We talked a lot about perspectives, but I appreciate your perspective on theater as a whole. On Face to Face, we've had people from very different fields in theater, and your perspective is so unique as a theater reviewer. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Well, thank you. And I'll just put another plug in for my radio station.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's soundsofbroadway.com. You can listen on your computer, download the app. Remember, Sounds of Broadway.
We will make sure to put the words on the bottom so everyone can go to it and listen to it 24/7.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
No problem.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on Face to Face. We would like to thank our sponsors, Oak Tree Development and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and Brad Ross for the themed music. You can follow us on legacytheaterct.org.